Hello everyone, this is Chadi Alraies from SIF 2023. With me, I'm really privileged to be with my friend Srinivas Iyengar. He's been a phenomenal structural interventionist, and a lot of trials and live cases broadcasted from SIF about structural heart. But we're going to focus a bit about Watchman. It's spreading, it's a lot of demand, and so we have to fine-tune the skill and the devices. So what's coming up?
So that's great, Chadi. Thanks for having me. And I'd like to explain to everyone that what's happening in the left atrial appendage closure space, there seems to be a lot of things that are going on right now, ongoing, that trials are either enrolling or finished enrolling to potentially expand the indications for utilizing specifically Watchman for left atrial appendage closure.
Right.
One of the trials that we had spoken about this morning that I had actually, when I was presenting my presentation, was called the Champion trial. It's finished enrolling and we're expecting the results in the next year or so. And this trial will actually utilize or look at patients who are eligible to take a blood thinning medication, anticoagulation, versus getting the Watchman device. So this is, historically, Watchman was only being placed in patients who had a high CHA2DS2-VASc score and and a correspondingly high HAS-BLED score and could not really tolerate long-term blood thinners. So that's where the Watchman fit. The Champion trial actually has been looking at patients who can take the blood thinners. So it is going to be interesting because not only are we going to be concerned about obviously the reduction in stroke, but bleeding and ischemic stroke, but they are going to march out 5 years with this trial. So we're going to really see a long-term kind of, effect of the device versus medical therapy. So we don't know the results, but if they are positive, I assume that we're going to see a huge swath of patients who are going to want to potentially get this device. So I think long-term data is really going to be necessary here.
So the potential outcomes or the primary endpoints is ischemic and bleeding.
Bleeding, ischemic, death. We're looking at multiple composites, but I will tell you that I think overall, just the fact that a patient may be able to get a mechanical therapy versus taking medication, even though they can take the medication, I think that's really the take-home point here.
It reminds me a little bit of prohibitive risk TAVR and extremely risk TAVR. That's how the TAVR started initially, and then it started a little bit all the way to low risk.
Absolutely, and I tell you though, that's the creep, the indication creep is out there. We know that with some other devices. That's why I'm glad this trial was done, because before it gets to the point where patients say, hey, I just don't want to take a blood thinner, can I get a Watchman? Because currently that's not indicated.
No.
And I'll be honest, I've had patients come to me and say, hey doc, I'm a skydiver, I can't be on blood thinners. And my response is, if you're skydiving and your parachute doesn't open, it doesn't matter if you're getting a Watchman or a blood thinner, it's not going to really help. So I think that patients come up with very creative reasons why not taking a blood thinner, but I will tell you, we need data. Absolutely. So the Champion is definitely going to hopefully guide us in one way or the other. Second thing that we were talking about today is the Option trial. So this is another trial basically looking at AFib ablation and closure of the left atrial appendage. So our electrical colleagues, being a plumber and an interventionalist, I don't obviously do ablations, but this trial is looking at patients who are eligible to either take a blood thinner after an ablation or get a Watchman at the time of ablation. During or before or after they can actually get this device, which is very interesting because it will open up, again, that avenue for electrophysiologists to say, hey, if I'm doing an ablation and this patient is actually eligible to get a Watchman device, can I put a device in now rather than any blood thinning medication?
He's already or she's already in that space, and that left
right,
side of the heart.
Exactly. So I think that is another major trial that finished enrollment, and next year we anticipate to see that results.
Perfect.
And there's a third trial that we talked about this morning called Watch TAVR, which is Watchman and TAVR being done at the same time. And I really believe this trial is also completed enrollment. I'll be curious as well, because adding a secondary procedure to a TAVR procedure, which we all know TAVR has really gotten slimmed down and quicker and more efficient because we've all gotten better at it. So the question is, how much more time would be added by doing a Watchman procedure during this procedure if the results are positive? So these are 3 trials that we expect to be resulted next year. I think next year will be a real interesting time for Watchman and left atrial appendage closure. And again, I do believe though, going back to Champion, long-term data is really going to guide us, because what I always like to tell my patients, a localized therapy is potentially going to replace a systemic medication. We have to keep that in mind, that AFib is still a systemic process, and we really do need to know long-term are we doing the best thing for our patients? So again, this is a very positive time to be involved in these type of devices, but it'd be interesting to see what those trials show next year.
Well, wonderful summary. Thanks so much, Srinivas, for your time and for a wonderful insight about the trials. Watch these videos and others on SIF YouTube channel. This is SIF Conversation. Thanks so much, Srinivas.
Thank you.